All right, folks, this is a big one, so stick around if you'd like to. Okay, today's the 28th of April, 2025. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. 4 sides to us. I'll talk about each of the 4 sides and what they are. I will talk about where clothing sits, and then we'll get into the discussion, which is the right collarbone, and specifically the right side for all the reasons that we will discuss. I'm anticipating this being a pretty long video because, as are all the things that we talk about under In the Image Clothing Company, this is something that will never change, something that will apply to human beings and every one of them, even this person here, for literally ever. The human being is just what it is. So this is the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, where we talk about how to keyword allow the human body to work. It's just, as I've been saying recently, a mechanical machine placed on a rock in space, the human body. Its hinges, levers, rotations, and we live on an earth with gravity pulling us straight down from our center line. The sternum, the spine, the nose, the trachea, and the jaw, which naturally stabilizes the entire body. Okay, those things have to be in the center with 2 feet, one on either side of the body, opposing the center line, gripping arches inward, keeping us vertical, allowing us to just operate, and there you go. So, I will address also wind noise, if and where, okay? In the Image Clothing Company, we're raw, we're real. It's as if I'm just sitting here with you speaking truth, because I'm speaking truth, and so just like a conversation. These videos, most all of them, you could just get everything you would need from audio only, because it's about me just giving information, giving truth. That's all we really do. But we will have clothing available as well, made out of 100% natural materials, staying centered, fitting correct, and that's how we allow, keyword, the human body to work. And I'll get into that and discuss what it means for clothing to fit correct when I said I'll talk about where clothing sits. But, yes, the body has to stay in its center, and it really is about the skeletal system. The human body doesn't need muscles unless there was something for the muscles to operate. It's about the skeletal system's positioning and everything having its neutral, and then from there it has its motions on either side of that neutral in every joint, okay? So, yeah, this is the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, where we discuss how to do that, because there's clothing that we place onto our bodies. The human body was designed by God in the image of Jesus Christ to just work, and it just would unless there was any reason that it couldn't. And clothing is the reason if it's imbalanced by any ounce of anything, because the body will only and can only ever work one way, and then something placed onto it, it just can't work around that thing. So yes, clothing is the only fix for human beings' physical problems, because regardless of what else is happening or what else you're trying to do to address your body, you're doing it within clothing, always. So yeah, we talk about the truth here, we get down to it, and that's just how it is, okay? Eating, standing, sleeping, walking, sitting, hydration, naturally, okay? All the functions of the human being we discuss here and how to do them. We know it in depth. We know it undisputedly. We know it not in some way where we have an opinion on what might work, but we know it. And I make it known that I know it. But I also say, don't believe me. Don't believe In the Image Clothing Company. Truth is truth. Try these things and they'll work. There you go. Don't believe it, try it. Okay? We have another 4th of us in the Image Clothing Company podcast, where I get into really deep and bold and blunt and raw and real discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, aka the truth of all things. As I just said, don't believe it, but truth is truth. And we just discuss what this place is. We're all on the same earth and we're all human beings. How is it? What is it? Why is it? Okay, In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Another 4th of us is In the Image Clothing Company music. I show sizings and setups of guitars to allow the human body to work, and we can't alter our hands, and that happens often with guitars when they're set up incorrect. The hands are essentially the shoulders, as the feet are essentially the hips. The body can only ever work as a whole, activated in its entirety, the only way that it could ever. It would just do what it would if nothing was restricting it. And it's all there. Anywhere any of it goes, the rest has to follow. It's just one thing. And so we talk about specialists and how they can't actually get you anywhere. The problems in part of your body that you're experiencing pain are actually coming from something else not working correct. And so parts of the body try to compensate, and no compensation can happen within something that is all one. So the other fourth is In the Image Clothing Company dogs, okay? It's huge. I've been so prompted by God to push In the Image Clothing Company dogs as far as just awareness about it. Yes, personally, I will be breeding purebred standard poodles, and that's something that, in all seriousness, you could have the potential to end up with one of our puppies from one of the litters. Conditions on where you are, and there's just conditions on who the puppies will go to anyway, right? Because it's kind of like adopting a kid, really. But potentially, you could even end up with one if you're looking for a standard purebred poodle. But our whole slogan for that fourth of the company is letting dogs stay natural. There's unnatural materials in nowadays that just didn't exist in the past. In dog toys, all dog accessories of any kind, dehydrated dog kibble is unnatural. And collars, leashes, harnesses, they can be physically imbalanced around the neck of dogs, around the body of dogs, weight-wise imbalanced. And then the materials, right, ideally 100% natural. So In the Image Clothing Company will have dog collars and leashes and whatever else we get into as well available for dogs, similar to what we do with human beings for clothing. Right. Clothing for human beings. Same intent. Just ideally no restriction and natural. The goal is natural under In the Image Clothing Company. Now, clothing for everybody has to sit in the same location. There's no opinion, there's no dispute, there's no fashion, there's no preference. It just has to. Pants, and we discuss it so thoroughly, there's no way you could even question if it's something that's true or not. That's why I said That's why I said at the beginning of this is probably going to be very long. This specific video. Okay, it's just what it is. There's only one way you could ever let your body not be damaged, and it's by the only thing that's ever placed onto it. Always, which is clothing. It's always on us. And it's always going to damage you if it's not allowing your body to work. Pants have to be entirely above the hips with the waistband. Then there's no restriction to the whole functionality of the pelvis. Slightly higher in the front than the rear for the waistband angle, because these core muscles have to shorten to work the way they would always be unless something altered them. The only way they ever could do anything. There's a video here on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company titled Muscles Only Contract. That's the case, okay? Tops that we wear, there's seams on top of our shoulders, and they need to be evenly behind the peak of our shoulders. Button-ups have a band of material rather than just a singular seam. They naturally do sit behind the shoulders. The edge seams, this could be slightly narrower for the shoulder seams, for me personally, as far as this button-up goes, but they need to be right at the very edges of just where the functionality of the shoulder joint is. I say I speak out of example, but I also just address things where I do. Okay, this could be slightly smaller. I say it because I noticed it as well, right? So, two things we have under In the Image Clothing Company, titling them prerequisites. We put ropes across the top of our feet into these man-made things we call shoes. We call them shoelaces, but that's really all that they are. There's only one way to weave a rope across our feet that is shaped the way that the feet are mechanically going to work. There's so many joints in the feet. There's a neutral foot straight out from the pinky toe forward. There's a neutral ankle straight down from that outward curvature of the lower leg. There's only one way that you can do it without altering your whole body to the tip of your head and the tips of your fingers from a rope placed in your shoes. In the Image Clothing Company's shoelace technique, found wherever you find us, 5 words as a whole. In the Image Clothing Company, okay? With that, we tie our shoes evenly over toward the center line of the human being that has to be there because it just is on an earth with gravity and 2 sides to the human being, okay? Second prerequisite is to remove all tags. Conditional, there's not always tags placed, and there wasn't ever until just decades before today's date. Tags are either just causing a physical gap, changing the body's only workings, skeletal system-wise, and or just not allowing musculature to activate. So included is within the shoes. All tags removed. And yeah, I'm going to show my boots just so you can see how they're laced. These are the Zero Denver leather boots by Zero Shoes, Xero. No affiliation with that brand as of today's date or up until, but maybe one day. I've been shouting them out since the founding of In the Image Clothing Company with no expectation for compensation, but they just do amazing things. Their slogan is living life feet first. And yes, as the founder of a company that's geared around clothing for the entire rest of the human body, yeah, they do what they say they're doing, okay? So, the right collarbone, specifically the right, there's a video here on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company titled The Right-Handed World. We live in one. Human beings at this time period, give or take, 85% of the population is right-handed. So things that are made to be used by human beings are geared toward right-handed people. And when we use things with our right hand, normally that means we're getting our right side of our entire body farther away from our center line than our left side. So then we get into this chronic patterning of everything on the right side going more external rather than internal rotation-wise, okay? External rotation at the hip, internal rotation at the hip stems from the foot. External rotation at the shoulder, internal rotation at the shoulder stems from the hand, okay? As I say, because it's the truth. In the Image Clothing Company, okay? So, clothing patterns themselves are right-handed. There's many things within clothing that cause that to be the case. What I just discussed about what is happening within the quote-unquote right-handed patterning, even in left-handed people, okay? So, yeah. Yeah. The right collarbone, the collarbones are these, okay? Here's your sternum, this bone in the front, from the base of our trachea, which is in the center of the human being, starting there, right where the top of my button is, okay, for the first button of my button-up shirt here, coming down to the bottom of the sternum is where these ribs come up into the center, okay, right above our abdominal muscles, right here. So this is our sternum, this big bone, and each rib comes in and connects to the sternum in the front. Right above this, at the very top of the sternum, is the insertion of our collarbones. When I talk about how seams need to sit behind the peak of the shoulder, that's the other end of the collarbone. So the collarbones determine what the shoulders will do. If I put my finger here on the insertion of the collarbone next to my sternum, and the other end of it's up here at the very peak of the shoulder, when I'm moving my arm, it's that collarbone that's doing the motion. Wherever the arm goes, it's the collarbone determining that, okay? And so that's why it's so huge. And the reason why we focus for this video on just the right collarbone is because of the right-handed world that we live in, okay? Oversized clothing will fall toward your dominant side, being the right side for right-handed people. But there's also the dreaded collar seam, as we call it, under In the Image Clothing Company. I talk about the importance of it. I used to say often, if I were to go a third, as far as adding an additional prerequisite, after shoelacing and tying, and then removing all tags, I would say the dreaded collar seam modification under In the Image Clothing Company. If there's a collar around our neck and a center to that, where we breathe through the trachea, where our spine is stabilizing our body, where there's muscles on either side doing the exact same thing that have to oppose a direct center on an earth with gravity, if the collar's sitting imbalanced, then our whole body down to the tips of our toes and the tips of our fingers will be imbalanced as well. So if there's a seam placed into a collar that has to sit evenly centered around our neck, it just won't. There's an airplane, I understand, for the sake of the audio. Now, In the Image Clothing Company's dreaded collar seam modification is a must for every human to ever live. It's doing the exact same thing to your entire body. And it's huge what it is doing. So, with a collar seam, just design-wise, it's almost always placed on the left side. Right here, right behind the peak of the left shoulder, right where this upper trapezius muscle that connects from the very base of the rear of the skull along the cervical spine and to the top/rear of the shoulder, that's right where that collar seam is placed in designs of clothing. And ideally we never have seams in our collars, but I've discussed so many times what it does. There's a video on the main site of In the Image Clothing Company here titled Keeping Collars Centered. I might have just referenced that a minute or two ago, but if I didn't, now I did. If I did, now I've done it twice. There's videos that we have just titled The Dreaded Collar Seam, and I did 3 of those last year in 2024. We talk about it very, very, very often, and that collar seam placed on the left side here will take the collar of our shirt and make it fall to the right side because there's excess material here, and just the nature of what it does, it places where the collar seam is higher on your body than any other part of where the collar is around the neck. So this side here, the front right of the neck, is the exact opposite of the rear left of the neck where that collar seam's placed. So this front right of the neck collar area drops like this, and you see it. Look around at people, and it's because of that collar seam. If your collar is just wider than your neck and you're right-handed, it's just going to fall like that anyway. But with that collar seam, even if your collar fits snug around your neck, it will still be imbalanced in the same way, as if it was just gravity or play causing it to fall and open this right front part of the neck. And guess what? That collarbone inserts right here. My finger's on that collarbone, right where the bone comes in and meets the other bone, which is the sternum. Okay, that's a joint. That's where all the motion that happens when your shoulder moves is happening, right there. And if your collar is just sitting on that joint while you're breathing through your trachea, right, through your nose or your mouth, it's coming through your trachea, which is just the tube in the neck that is in the center of the human being on an earth with gravity. There's diaphragms, meaning muscles in our neck as well as in our abdomen, that allow for breathing to happen. And having an imbalanced collar there goes directly to that collar bone on the insertion of it to the sternum, because that's the highest bone until you get to just the neck. There's no muscle, or there's no bones within the neck besides the spine. There's a lot of muscles, but that collarbone insertion here is the highest bone, and then you've just got the neck. And stabilizing of the head, breathing, everything with the jaw, right? That's all just right there above that collarbone. Yeah, so there's a video that I made under the main site of In The Image Clothing Company here titled The Human Head. And I talked about it in depth, okay? That collarbone insertion is huge. So if we're wearing something where there's anything in it at all whatsoever, just something oversized, it's going to just slip to the dominant side and the right side of the body will be lower. A dreaded collar seam on the left side, the right side of the body will be lower. Shoes tied unevenly, any direction that's not over toward the inside, evenly on both feet, because there's a center line to the human being. But right-handed, if you're tying them unevenly, the right side of your whole body is just going to be dropped. Okay, look at the foot. Okay, anything, everything, all things that could cause the right side of the body to be lower. Okay, so look up In The Image Clothing Company's official shoelace technique. Look up how drawstrings affect body mechanics under In The Image Clothing Company's main site here. Tying a drawstring, right-handed knot-wise, will drop the entire right side of your body. Pay attention to what the collarbone is going to do when the right side of the body gets dropped, okay, in all the things I'm mentioning here. Tags placed in the left side of clothing, where they almost always are, actually drops the right side of the body, okay? Yeah, anything placed into a right pocket, nothing should ever be in pockets of human beings, but that will just drop the right side of the whole body because your hip flexor, where that thing in the pocket is placed in the front, won't be able to fully elongate, which is opening up the body and allowing it to get full extension, and so it will then be dropped if there's something placed in the right side of a pocket, okay? Man, how pockets affect body mechanics under In The Image Clothing Company. On the main side, there's a video. So, the collarbone on the right side has to be even height, okay, with the left side, because there's two sides to the body with a center line in the middle. There's a neutral wrist here, okay, straight out from the pinky finger, from the forearm. Yeah, there's a video under the main site of In The Image Clothing Company here titled The Right Wrist, for similar reasons why there's this one about the right collarbone, okay? There's a video under the main site of In The Image Clothing Company here titled The Right Pelvis Crest, for similar reasons to what I'm talking about in this video about the right collarbone. Now, the term for the collarbone is the clavicle, okay? The actual terminology for it. If our neutral wrist isn't there on the right side, which will happen for all reasons and any reasons that the right side of the body could just be dropped, stemming clear down at our feet, okay? The hand is essentially the shoulder. As I say so often, there's a video under the main site of In The Image Clothing Company here titled The Hands Are Essentially the Shoulders. It might be worded, the hand is essentially the shoulder. Okay. The hand being the shoulder and the collarbone determining where the shoulder goes. If our neutral wrist at our right hand is altered, our collarbone angle on the right side will be as well. There's only one neutral in everything in the entire body, okay? It has to reside within that unless being used otherwise to do something, then it will come back to its only neutral, and here you go. The human body as a whole. A video under the main site here of In The Image Clothing Company, okay? So, there's only one way it could ever work, all right? Every human being to ever live. Okay. When we don't have the ability to get this right collarbone elevated to the same height as the left one. Where this insertion is from the actual bone of the collarbone to the sternum, when muscles insert, it kind of looks like this. Imagine this is the sternum and this is my collarbone, okay? The end of the collarbone will just be pivoting right along where it connects to that sternum, like this, okay? If the collarbone here, right, is always dropped like this, and this is my sternum, okay, then right here, scar tissue will build up because the collarbone's always only working in this patterning that we're talking about at a lower position than it would ever actually look right here where this is, where I'm pointing to, the knuckle of my finger. The neutral collarbone would be more up here. And so since it's always dropped in this patterning, there's this scar tissue that gets built up at the top of that collarbone, okay? So that's just going to happen because of the angle of the bone from all these things within clothing that are nowhere near the collarbone that are just affecting the position of the shoulder. It's just going to happen because of that. But then you have a collar of a top and it's just sitting right on that collarbone rather than up close, snug around your neck, right? So the upper trapezius muscles can actually work rather than a collar just pulling you down into nothingness and you feel like you're dying. Most people on the earth today are in that state. There's only one way the human body could ever work. It's a mechanical machine placed on a rock in space. Episode 112 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, and I said some pretty harsh words in there. I put language warning on it because yes, but I kept saying that phrase in there so many times. There's only one way the human body could ever work. It's a mechanical machine placed on a rock in space. Because it's the truth, and I just hit it as hard as I hit it because it's the truth. For every human to ever live, there's no opinion, no other way you could ever possibly rid your body's physical pain. Wind noise. I get it. Wind noise. And here it comes. Oh. And I'll say this. Not that I was battling this video, but there was like this battle of this video being able to be made as I was walking over here. And it's a huge one. It's so hard hitting. And everything's been so different past few days. And yeah. So the right collarbone. I said this video is something I anticipated being really huge, but I think that's actually all I'm going to say within this. But the magnitude of it is huge. It's just the length of it might not be much longer than this. I'll just kind of say a couple more things and wrap it up. There's only one neutral position for that collarbone, but as the neutral wrist, which is the thing that I show because it's so visually easy to show, there's both sides. Outside of that neutral, there's up for the wrist and there's down. And the collarbone's neutral is a higher position than most people's right collarbone are in usually. And then from that neutral, it can then go up even higher, or it can go down, right? That, again, beautiful. It's just, like I say, the only way the human body ever works is the only way that it ever could, the way that God designed it. The way that I'm sitting here, I'm holding this device with a neutral wrist, so my collarbone's in a neutral position, and from there I was able to show the visual of it can go up and it can go down from its only neutral. But we need to address all the scar tissue that's right here, where that collarbone comes in and connects to the sternum, and especially the scar tissue up on the top of that joint to enable the shoulder to actually be able to lift. Okay, so today is the 28th, it is already, of April 2025, My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company and all 4 sides. Stick around for In the Image Clothing Company dogs. Check out any of the other 3 sides of the company if you'd like to. And thank you.